So one of the things that we talk a lot about internally, a lot of people outside HubSpot talk about, is the culture here. Kind of a laid-back culture, and about, 9 months, a year ago, maybe less, you introduced the no vacation policy.
Yep.
So the no vacation policy essentially says, if you need to take time off, take it. Get your work done, make the arrangements necessary to make sure you're covered while you're away, come back, and get back to work. That's a pretty cool policy. People have, I think, accepted that well.
Me too.
Other than the no vacation policy, how do you think HubSpot envisions the culture, and I think you'd call it postmodern culture, that we're trying to build here at HubSpot?
Yep. A lot of people trying to think we're trying to build a kind of a startup culture. I actually don't think we're trying to do that. We're trying to build this thing I call postmodern culture. I don't know why I call it that, but I call it that. And the culture was sort of inspired. I was watching the show Mad Men. Do you watch Mad Men?
I don't, but I know a lot of people do.
The crux of the show Mad Men is it's set in the 1950s, and it's a big company, and it's a spoof on culture essentially in the 1950s. So all the men are executives with big offices and couches. They drink their faces off all day. They smoke their faces off all day. All the women are secretaries and wear pretty dresses every day. And it's very hierarchical, and it's just very old school. And I was sitting there watching the show initially, and I was like, what if they made a show 50 years from today about corporate culture today? Like, what would they poke fun at? And I was like, they poke fun at a lot of stuff. The way companies are run today, I think, is very much a legacy from World War II, where after World War II, the generals all left and they worked in enterprise, and they built their companies to be very command and control, very top down, very hierarchical, and they ran them like the military. And I think the legacy of businesses since then is very sort of this military feel. And I think for businesses that were formed post-internet, and particularly businesses that have a lot of Gen Y, younger people in them, I think we need to fundamentally rethink the way companies work and people work and the relationship between the corporation and the employee. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to build a postmodern culture, a culture that is 10, 20 years ahead, that is not based on the sort of military-industrial complex way of thinking of building an organization, but a new modern business that's very different from the ground up.
So you think there's a lot of things that will change over time in business and organizations in terms of like rules and regulations and expectations and things like that?
I think there will, and some very specific things. I think the Gen Yers, the millennials coming into the workforce, have a very different expectation of what it's like to work, and have a very different expectation of what it's like around what their relationship with their boss is like, and their CEO and their company. And we're trying to make an organizational structure and a culture that's very attractive to these young, smart millennials, of which I'm not one. I'm a more Gen X guy. And part of that is they feel like they've grown up with this big fat pipe coming into their house, and they grew up with Facebook, and they think the world should be much more transparent, much more authentic, much more collaborative, versus very hierarchical. So there's a bunch of things that are unique about HubSpot that grow out of that. First, we're just extremely transparent. We're trying to make it as extremely transparent. Yes, very transparent. Pretty much nothing happens that's a secret around here except for people's salaries. I wonder if salaries should be transparent as well. Any board meeting that happens, any management meeting that happens, we very quickly try to post the minutes of the meeting on the wiki. It's probably the world's most active wiki. People are very active on it, very collaborative on it. We don't think about hierarchy like most people. So for example, I have a bunch of people who work for me, but I feel like I work for example, we have a woman, Jordan Wu, that I was just meeting with, that owns our relationship with Google and Salesforce.com. I sort of work on her team. She leads that team, tells me what she needs from me. I may give her some ideas, but I sort of follow her lead. And so it's a very flat, sometimes you report to sometimes someone reports to you. It's a very different way of thinking about it. And I think that's a product also of this military-industrial complex thing, that knowledge workers don't need as much management, for example, as blue-collar workers, that knowledge workers are self-sustaining. And also that it used to be that information was hard to come by and information was power, and now information, at least in HubSpot, is everywhere. Everyone's got the exact same information. So information is in power. You don't have this exclusive right to information. your knowledge and your contribution is where your power comes from, not not the information you have in your head. And something like a wiki and instant messaging and mobile, all of that has completely changed where the information lies in the ability to make decisions and the ability to have impact. We're trying to build a culture that realizes that so much has changed.